Is there a place and time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable.
Makeshift Stories presents Episode 309, Utopia Base, read by Kathleen Connolly. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, Utopia might not be where you expect.
It's 4 a.m. and I'm both tired and excited. On short notice, we left Utopia Base 6 hours ago. I shaded my eyes as the rover rolled out of a shadow. The sun, as always, was low on the horizon, barely above the distant ridge that formed the lip of Schrödinger crater. Living on the edge of the lunar South Polar Basin, where the sun never completely dips below the horizon, you get used to the perpetual sunset. However, the lights on the Colony Dome dim tonight mode every 12 hours to maintain our circadian rhythm. The rover's portal automatically darkened, reducing the harsh glare, and I was tempted to set it to night mode, but watching the lunar surface roll by was a good way to pass the time. The woman beside me, my fellow winner, finally woke and stretched. She had fallen asleep as soon as she sat down. She must have had less notice than I did. I didn't even know her name. How much longer? She yawned. About 20 hours, I think. I'm not sure. I wasn't paying attention. They only told me I had won a placement 2 hours before departure, I explained. Me too, she grinned sleepily. They say the housing is better than Utopia Base, but I don't see how. We get everything we want, so how could it be better? I'm Quinn. Quinn held out her hand. No calluses. She had probably worked in base administration. I shook it. I'm Faraday. Everything happened so quickly that I'm still reeling. I barely had time to pack. I know it's a short rotation, and I'm honored to be chosen, but I'm not sure I've brought everything. You can requisition whatever you've forgotten, Quinn reminded. Everything is good. Every need is met. Through contribution and cooperation, I automatically completed the colony motto. Those were the first words I had learned. Truth be told, I had never wanted for anything. That was life in Utopia Base. We were taken care of, no one went without, as long as we all pitched in, did our part, and took our daily shot of sustain, a miracle drug that compensated for muscle and bone loss in the low lunar gravity. It made life on the moon possible. Did you see the last broadcast from Earth? It was picked up by our satellite, Quinn asked. No, I admitted. I'm not very interested in events from afar. Most people aren't, Quinn agreed. Things are getting desperate down there. And now with the environment collapsing, there's nowhere to go since the last near-side base was closed. We're so lucky to have been born in Utopia. We are, I agreed. The shuttle lurched, throwing me against my restraints. Bang! Thump! The squeal of bending metal followed, and then the rover came to an abrupt stop. We have broken an axle, the autopilot explained. Please remain seated while power is routed to the other wheels. After a moment, the shuttle jerked into motion, moving slower than before, this time with a rhythmic grinding sound. Once we are at Camp G, shuttle service will be discontinued to allow repairs. Estimated repair time, 10 days. Everything is good. Every need is met, we both replied automatically. A few minutes later, the excitement of being selected was replaced by my need for sleep, and I dozed off. The shuttle jerked to a stop. What? For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Looks like we're there, Quinn said, nodding out the portal. Outside, a few lights slashed the darkness, illuminating strips of the lunar surface. I can't see much. I cupped my hands and leaned against the glass. Quinn unbuckled her restraints, got up and fished her helmet out of the overhead rack. This unit will shut down until repairs are made, the autopilot announced. The shuttle drifted into silence as systems began to shut off. Cabin air will be evacuated in 2 minutes. I fumbled with my helmet, sealing it. The hatch opened, and I followed Quinn out. The darkness folded unnervingly around me, consuming my helmet light, reducing the world to a few illuminated steps. Unlike Utopia, Camp G, nestled near the crater edge, was perpetually shrouded in shadow. It was why the mine was here. Without sunlight, it was so cold that water froze and mixed with the regolith and helium-3, safe from the sun, accumulated in the shadows. Home for the next few weeks, Quinn's voice suddenly chirped over the radio. We carried our tote bags to the airlock while robots unloaded the other supplies. Lights, I commanded as soon as Quinn finished locking the inner hatch. I unsealed my helmet. Cold air rushed in, bringing with it hints of the former crew. Hadn't they ever showered? The mine only operated when Utopia's helium-3 stocks were low, so there had been plenty of time for the bots to thoroughly clean. Illumination strips running along the ceiling flickered to life, and we found ourselves standing in a rather sterile hall. The walls were scratched and worn from the repeated passage of shipping crates and bulky environment suits. We found 2 empty lockers, took off our suits, and stowed them. For some reason, the cleaning bots hadn't been to our quarters. They were more generous than my rooms at Utopia Base, but like the entrance hall, they smelled and needed cleaning. Instead of unpacking, I made my way to the control room to add a sanitization request to the base's maintenance system. Quinn was already there. My rooms need cleaning, she explained. Mine too. Have you put in a request? Just doing that and giving it a high priority, she assured. Quinn's fingers danced across the keyboard. A calendar with the day's automated tasks appeared, jogging my memory. Oh, I haven't transferred my sustained doses to the medbay dispenser yet. I usually take it around this time. Excusing myself, I headed back to my rooms to unpack. I had forgotten my sustain. I realized that as soon as I opened my bag, the cassette with my doses was missing. Quinn, are you still in the control center? I asked using the room's comm panel. Yes, what's up? Can you check the base inventory for sustain? I forgot to pack mine, I was embarrassed to admit. A minute passed. No, there's none. There's my own, but that doesn't help. I'd message Utopia and request more, but the external comms are down. I've put that on the maintenance list as well. Guess I'll need to spend my off hours in the gym, keep muscle and bone mass up the hard way. It's only a couple of weeks. How much could I lose in a couple of weeks? You'll probably be okay, Quinn agreed. My arms complained as I slid the telepresence goggles over my eyes. Lifting weights for the last week had made my entire body sore, and for some reason, my senses were more acute than I ever remember. I'm taking over Harvester supervision. Confirmed, Quinn acknowledged, pausing operations while Faraday takes control. She said for the record. The sour smell of stale sweat wafted into my nostrils. These VR glasses stink, I complained, and my rooms still smell like an armpit. Can you up the cleaning frequency in the maintenance schedule? Sure, Quinn confirmed. However, the system claims everything is nominal. It's cleaner here than it was back at Utopia. I can't smell anything in my rooms, but I'll have the cleaning bots sanitize your space twice a day. How does that sound? Thanks, I said, taking hold of my control stick. It was tacky from use. Had that been there yesterday? The gummy buildup would have taken a while. Why hadn't I noticed it until now? Were you using my workstation? No, why? My joystick is covered in grease and dirt. Move over, let me see. Quinn slid into my chair. Seems fine to me, she declared after a moment. But I'll have the cleaning bots wipe it down at the end of your shift. It could just be something that was on your hands. Sure, I agreed, but wasn't entirely convinced. I am scrupulous about washing my hands. Why was I questioning a colleague's opinion? With the VR glasses on, the room around me vanished, and I was in a virtual tower with a view of the lunar surface. Both harvesters glowed in the infrared. At the moment, one was trundling toward the extraction plant to empty its hopper. The other was grinding across the bottom of the open pit. We only take control when there is a problem. I switched the display from infrared to visible light. The extraction plant, mine, and harvesters disappeared into the gloom, which extended across the crater floor, only ending where the sun painted the top of its walls in brilliant white. What was beyond those hills? The thought just came into my head. I tried to dismiss it, but it kept circling back. You could take a look in your off time. No, I told myself. You're not the adventurous type. Why am I even thinking about this? The joystick rumbled and the VR glasses toggled to a point of view from the harvester at the extraction plant. The machine was stuck. It couldn't figure out how to back away. It was confused by ruts worn into the loading ramp. The harvester's limited mind had confused them with obstacles. This happened every day, and I was forced to manually back it down the ramp into the mine while the onboard AI rebooted. I hit the intercom button. Quinn? Got a minute? Yeah, what's up? I could hear Quinn eating. Did you log the problem we're having with Harvester 1, mistaking ruts in the road for raised obstacles? Yeah, but with the comms problem, I don't know if Utopia got the note. Regardless, it takes time to code a patch. It won't be ready until after our rotation is over. Who cares anyway? Driving those beasts is fun. Sure. I broke the connection, then found myself checking the error logs. The problem had been reported since the mine started operating. 5 years and no patch. I took a deep breath. Why did I even care? Things like this had never bothered me before. Nothing more happened, and the shift dragged on forever. Boredom set in, and my mind wandered. Why was Camp G such a prestigious assignment? Remote supervising harvesters was monotonous. Did we make the daily quota? I jumped. Quinn had slipped unnoticed into central control. You startled me, I complained. Looking at the time on the control panel, I added, Next time, message if you're coming early. Quinn looked hurt. Sorry, she apologized. I had been rude, and that wasn't like me. Walking back to my rooms, a whiff of burning insulation caught my attention. Concerned, I stopped. The smell was coming from a wall panel. The screws holding it in place had been stripped with use, and the wall around it was greasy with handprints. The panel fell into my hands as soon as I touched it. Inside, the electrical junctions were covered in dust, the source of the odor. One was crudely taped together. I poked at it, and the lights in the hall flickered. Replacing the cover, I went back to the control center. Quinn, this place is falling apart. Everything is fine, Faraday, Quinn assured, without taking off her VR glasses. All the equipment works and we have everything we need. There's nothing to worry about. Get a drink from the kitchen, watch a vid in the lounge, relax, or work out in the gym to take the edge off. Maybe being off of sustain is affecting your mood. Was she right? I had never been off the drug for so long and didn't know anyone who had stopped taking it for more than a day or two. Quinn was eagerly devouring lunch when I arrived in the common room for a break the next day. What are you having? Chickpea and apple puree, she said between mouthfuls. Do you ever get tired of puree? Everything is pureed, Faraday. It's easy to freeze and store. We stockpile it when the greenhouses have excess and use it when there's crop failure. It evens out food production. Every need is met. Through contribution and cooperation, I grumbled automatically, suddenly having the urge to mock the colony motto. I ate a raw tomato once while working a greenhouse shift, I confessed. Quinn looked scandalized. It was great, more flavor than an unthawed puree. And the texture? The texture was amazing. I felt so guilty about it, I skipped lunch for a week. However, at this moment, I'd do it again and enjoy it. Our food is bland and flavorless. Why can't we occasionally have something fresh from the farms? It wouldn't collapse the whole food production system, would it? I'm sure there's a reason, Faraday. The system works and we all have enough. Why question perfection? Quinn stopped eating and swiveled her chair to face me. Behind her, the controls on the food prep machine flickered on and off. How long had that been broken? The table Quinn was sitting at was chipped and scratched, in need of replacement. There were wear marks on the tile floor. Had I even seen a maintenance bot since we arrived? Details suddenly assaulted my mind, as if my senses had been in a deep freeze until that moment. A dam seemed to burst in my brain, and questions flowed, as if someone else were asking them. Why is this camp so run down? Why haven't the harvester nav systems ever been updated? Last night, I checked our production quotas against Utopia's fusion reactor's power output. Our shift alone is extracting enough H3 to power Utopia for 2 years. Why are we producing so much? Quinn shrugged. It's stockpiled for a rainy day? Faraday, you've been weird lately. Have you been sticking to your extended exercise routine? No, I admitted. I can do a longer shift if you need more time to work out, she offered. Thanks, no, you're right. I need to motivate myself to do more. Exhausted by an extra 2 hours in the gym, I dragged myself back to my rooms. Despite the physical fatigue, my mind refused to settle. Questions, new observations, and new ideas whirled in my head. Was it withdrawal from sustain? Was I sick? Was I dying? Instead of my room, I headed to the med bay and logged into its database. Sustain withdrawal symptoms, I requested. My hands were shaking as I typed. Nothing. I tried again, this time with just the word sustain. Sustain promotes musculoskeletal integrity and psychosomatic balance to counteract long-term exposure to low gravity. Psychosomatic balance? What did that mean? There was no further explanation. It was a dead end. I sighed and leaned back in the chair, trying to relax when something caught my eye. The dispensary had Quinn's doses of sustain, neatly stacked and ready for use. On an impulse, I opened the cabinet, grabbed her supply, and fed it to the recycler. What happened to my sustain? Quinn burst into the control center the next morning. I went to the med bay and all the doses are gone. I fed them to the recycler, I admitted. Why? Quinn pleaded. Her eyes were wild. It was an experiment. I needed a second data point. After you said I was acting odd, I went to the med bay to look up the withdrawal symptoms of sustain. We all take it. I can't be the first person who forgot to bring their supply on a field assignment, but there's nothing, Quinn. Not a single word. The only mention of sustain references something called psychosomatic balance. I have no clue what that means, do you? The color drained from Quinn's face. She backed into the hall. You're crazy! Quinn ran to the closest comms port and fiddled with the controls. Utopia Base, emergency, please respond, she yelled into the mic. It doesn't work, remember. Nothing in the maintenance schedule has been repaired. Have you even seen a maintenance bot since we arrived? They work at night while we're asleep, she insisted. Do they? Come on, let's check out the maintenance bay, I suggested. Quinn followed cautiously behind as we walked through the connecting tunnel to the maintenance dome. A few lights flickered reluctantly on when we arrived, revealing the robots that repaired the mining camp, which lay scattered about in various stages of disassembly. Dust covered everything. They've been scavenged for parts. There, look. I pointed to the only fully assembled robot frozen in mid-operation in the back corner. It must have been attempting to replace its power supply when something went wrong. Tongue-tied, Quinn gaped at the carnage. I guess no one noticed or cared as long as there was food, air, and the H3 kept coming. Every need is met, right? No, Quinn exclaimed. There's got to be some other explanation. She turned and ran from the maintenance bay. For a few days, Quinn avoided me, leaving her shift before I arrived at the control center, eating at different times and taking different routes. So I was surprised when she intercepted me one morning before my shift. Faraday? My heart almost leapt out of my chest. Quinn! I spun around to find her standing behind me. Where'd you come from? The launch pad, she explained. Did her voice have a slight tremor? I'm still mad at you for dumping my sustain, but I'd like to show you something. I'll be late for my shift. Our production numbers will suffer, I reminded her. I don't think that matters. Quinn's comment caught me off guard. Why not? I demanded. It's easiest just to show you. She took me to the airlock and began suiting up. We're going to the launch pad where the hopper is being prepped for flight. After you destroyed my sustain, I thought you were losing your mind. I didn't feel safe here anymore, so I decided to try to catch a ride on the next hopper back to Utopia. I went out there yesterday to figure out how to do that. The hopper has an unpressurized cargo compartment, so it's possible, but something about the fueling wasn't right. I came back here and slept on it, and then this morning I realized what had been bothering me. You're right, this camp hasn't been kept up. I don't know how I missed that before. It's got to be the sustain, Quinn. That's why I destroyed yours. It was an experiment. You wouldn't have voluntarily stopped taking it. No, I wouldn't have, she agreed. The only thing that's changed is us, I pointed out, struggling into my environment suit. The maintenance problems were always right in front of our eyes. We just didn't care until we stopped taking sustain. I don't know. Maybe it's an unintended side effect, or maybe it isn't. Quinn looked away. She wasn't ready to accept that. We hurried through the safety checks and cycled through onto the surface. Quinn's headlamps illuminated a trail of footprints leading out to the launch pad. The hopper was a shadowy, awkward collection of parts strapped to an open frame, around which large metal tanks had been welded. It rested on a set of spindly legs, with rocket nozzles filling the gaps between them. It towered over us. Thick cables and flex pipes draped off one side of the monster, leading to a squat tank farm. On the far side was a small reinforced shed. "Over there!" Quinn crackled over the radio, motioning toward the shed. We hopped over and Quinn entered first. The small, unpressurized structure housed a control panel designed for operation with gloved hands. She called up the fuel loading system, and it was immediately obvious what had caught her attention. "That's enough oxygen and hydrogen to get to escape velocity and land again," I noted. "The extra fuel doesn't make any sense, Faraday. Hopping over to Utopia, it's just extra weight." "Is the system malfunctioning?" Quinn switched to another screen. "I don't think so. The fuel load request came from Utopia. The automated systems are working fine." "Check the log and see if it's the same amount every time," I suggested. Quinn touched the control panel. She fumbled a few times, her thick gloves making it difficult to hit the key she wanted. Finally, a new screen opened. We stared at the numbers. It's always been the same as far back as the log goes." Quinn turned and looked at me. "Why?" I shrugged, but an idea was forming in the newly awakened part of my mind. "How long before launch?" "The H3 is already loaded. As soon as the fueling is complete. An hour, maybe less." "You agree with me about the conditions here, right, Quinn?" She hesitated, checked the numbers on the control panel again, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm seeing things I've never noticed before. Or maybe I noticed and, like you said, just didn't care. And the extra fuel means that the hopper's been going somewhere other than Utopia," I concluded. "That's the most likely explanation," Quinn agreed. "So let's think about this." The pieces were falling together in my head. It gets unloaded, fueled, and returns here, which means... "There's another base," Quinn deduced, eyes growing wide. "And it's a lot larger given the amount of H3 we've been sending there." We silently made our way back to the hopper, with Quinn guiding me around to the far side. There, we found a partially enclosed cargo platform that extended from the framework. It had enough space for 2 suited figures to sit comfortably. In fact, there were harnesses, and what appeared to be connections for recharging EVA suits. "How much time?" I asked. Quinn checked something on her heads-up display. 45 minutes. That's a guess." "Not enough time to get back and pack anything, so we go as is." Quinn nodded. We climbed up to the platform and strapped in, our suits automatically connected, and new menus appeared in our helmet displays, offering manual overrides for the hopper's systems. A countdown appeared, 10 minutes. "Guess I was wrong about the time to launch," Quinn radioed. Before I could respond, the hopper came to life, venting gases and creaking as systems pressurized with supercooled fuel. If Quinn was having second thoughts, it was too late. We were committed. We waited in silence, sealed into our own tiny worlds as the hopper groaned and creaked around us. 5 seconds. The engines ignited, shaking the machine so hard I swore it was coming apart. 0. I was slammed into the floor of the hopper, unable to breathe. Straining my neck to see down, the mining camp quickly shrank to a tiny scar. On the horizon, Utopia's dome momentarily glimmered against the black sky. It, too, soon became an insignificant blister on the lunar surface as the hopper continued to accelerate toward space. My vision tunneled. I was on the verge of unconsciousness. I needed to lift my head, but couldn't. Looking down had been stupid. Suddenly, the engines shut down. I could breathe, and my vision returned. I twisted in the harness to check on Quinn. Her head lolled in the 0G. Quinn, are you okay? She moved an arm. I fainted, she gasped. Guess all the blood rushed to my feet. The hopper continued to rise higher and higher on its ballistic trajectory until the moon's horizon curved and the lunar terminator, the divide between day and night, was visible. We arced toward it, the sun at our backs. It was night on the Earth side. Then, without warning, a dazzling crescent rose into view. Earth, I radioed. It was beautiful. Swirling white clouds flowed over azure blue oceans. Bits of green, brown, and ochre poked through, forming the familiar shapes of continents. Look at the poles, Quinn shouted. There's ice caps. She was right. The poles were ice-covered. They were supposed to have melted last century. I blurted into the helmet mic. We watched, stunned, as the Earth, looking like a photo taken 200 years before, rose above us. That's just not possible, I exclaimed. It should be a ruin. Quinn tapped my arm. Look down at the moon. Beneath us, another site that shouldn't exist rolled into view. The lights of numerous sprawling bases punctuated the night. The hopper began to arc down toward the largest. That's got to be 10 times the size of Utopia, I said, astonished and confused. They're supposed to be abandoned, Quinn added breathlessly. My heart began to pound as the hopper dropped. Part of a dome opened, revealing a landing pad outlined in flashing lights. We plummeted toward it, the surface rushing up to meet us. Come on, light the engines, I pleaded. Then I closed my eyes and braced for the impact. At the last second, the hopper rumbled to life. The floor of the platform slammed so hard against me that I lost consciousness. Someone was shining a light in my eyes. It wasn't programmed for passengers. The landing burn would have generated at least 12 Gs. It's amazing they weren't more injured. Ah! My mouth failed to form words. She's coming around. I blinked and tried to avert my eyes. A man was holding a penlight, pointing it into them. I pushed his arm away. That hurts. I'm seeing spots, I complained, propping myself on my elbows. Quinn was stretched out on a table beside me. Our environment suits, looking old and worn out, were draped over another. A young woman was busy prodding them with an instrument I had never seen before. Welcome back to Tycho Crater, the man who had been shining the penlight in my eyes said. You're safe. We pulled you off that automated hopper. You and your friend were unconscious. She's okay. We've sedated her so that we can set her broken arm. You're lucky that's your only injury. You pulled a lot of Gs. Why would you do something so stupid as to stow away on a tanker? I didn't believe the man. I had no memory of the landing. This could be Utopia for all I knew. I could have been unconscious for a few minutes or a few days. How long? I gasped. You mean how long were you unconscious? The man confirmed, then turned the penlight off and returned it to his pocket. About 35 minutes. We were amazed to find you alive. The flight profile isn't configured for passengers. But it could be, I challenged. Yes, although there hasn't been any need to go to the mining and refining complex in living memory. It's self-repairing, and all the functions are in the green. Which leads to an awkward question. How did you get on that hopper? I'm guessing you snuck on and did the round trip, but there's nothing at Schrödinger crater. Why would you want to risk your life to go there? And those suits you were in are museum pieces. You're lucky to be alive. You're not telling us the truth, I challenged. Everyone knows Tycho crater was abandoned decades ago when the last space program was canceled. As soon as the words had left my mouth, a memory of lighted domes during our descent worked its way into my consciousness, contradicting what I had just said. There is a whole colony in Schrödinger crater, I insisted, my confidence beginning to waver. We're from a place called Utopia Base. I've never heard of a colony on the far side of the moon. There's only robots there, the man claimed. 2,000 people live there. We were sent to do a shift at the H3 mine to supervise the harvesters. The man's face grew sympathetic. There were traces of a banned behavior modification drug in both your and your friend's blood. You're wrong. That's sustain. It's for low-G adaptation. Everyone at Utopia injects it, otherwise we die. Sure, that is a side effect, but not the drug's main purpose, the man said gently. You can see the problem with your story, can't you? There are only automated mines and processing plants in Schrödinger crater. No one has ever lived there. I wanted to argue, but knew it was hopeless without physical proof. It took several weeks to convince Tycho crater to change the orbit of one of their satellites to overfly Utopia, or Schrödinger Base as it's known here, which proved nothing. The dome's meteor shields are opaque from the outside. I knew that, but had hoped. Tire tracks on the surface were the only signs of activity. But tire tracks were proof of machines, not people. Without proof, we can't afford to redirect more resources to this, Faraday. My community liaison explained. The company running the mine and refining facilities insists that no one lives there. And you believe them? You believe they're not operating a slave labor camp? There's no proof, it's only your word, she said, trying to sound apologetic. Your friend Quinn has adapted well. But she still supports my story, right? Well, yes. But you were both given an illegal mind control drug. We suspect that someone implanted false memories. We haven't figured out why. I accept that you and Quinn honestly believe you lived at Schrödinger Base, and that you escaped and flew here on that hopper. However, Quinn has decided to put that behind her and build a life here. Tycho has a lot to offer, Faraday. You could even go back to Earth if you wanted. Who knows, maybe that's where you're from. Your DNA doesn't match anyone on the moon. I sighed. I want to let the people at Utopia know what's going on. I want to know who did this to us. I understand, but without any more information, we're at a dead end here. Faraday, you should follow Quinn's example and move on. Think about what you'd like to do with your life. Anything is possible. Let's meet again in a week. Sure, I agreed, not intending to keep the appointment. No one had questioned my decision to hang on to my old environment suit. True, it was deemed obsolete by Tycho's standards, but it still worked perfectly for me. By the time I liberated the out-of-service moon rover from the vehicle pool, I had grown accustomed to the lingering smell of sweat that clung to the suit. They wouldn't realize I was missing until I failed to show up for my next meeting. By then, I would be well on my way back to Utopia, where 2,000 people needed to hear my story, and together we would find out who had done this to us.
If you enjoyed this story, please share it with your friends or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps new listeners find us and keeps the podcast going. If you'd like to connect with us, please email makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Makeshift Stories is released in the first week of each month. This month's story was written by Vern Hume, aka Alan V. Hare, and read by Kathleen Connolly. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. Audio production and editing by Vicata Studios. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial, attribution, no derivative license.